Mitchell Starc is everywhere. He's in the Ashes, he's the only fit pacer from Australia's legendary trio. He's getting 5-wicket hauls with the pink ball, with the red ball. He's all over the place. He's taken over Wasim Akram. There's nothing at the moment that this man cannot do. As of now, he's the 15th highest wicket taker in Test cricket history. And if you look at left-arm bowlers, he's the second highest wicket taker in Test history once again. And for a left-arm pacer, he recently just went past Wasim Akram. Here is a man who in his 102 Test matches has taken 420 Test wickets. He's done this at an average of 26 and a strike rate of 46, but what's more impressive is that he's got 18 fifers and 3 10-wicket hauls. But when you have a conversation of the great fast bowlers, Mitchell Starc isn't someone who immediately comes to mind. In fact, in this generation itself, he's often overshadowed by Pat Cummins or Josh Hazlewood, his teammates in the current setup. But by no means does this mean that Mitchell Starc's journey as a pacer has not been legendary in itself. It's not been smooth sailing, it's been a Test career with a lot of ups and downs, and something that we will break down in this video. Now, before we get into this video analyzing Starc's career in 3 different phases, looking at his pink ball genius and a lot more, hit that subscribe button.
Point I was coming to is that a lot of people felt that we weren't hard enough on you in terms of the questions.
Yeah. So we've decided to disagree with everything you have.
That makes sense. Yeah. I mostly disagree with everything I say to you.
We're going to make it tough for you.
He's not a dynamic captain. You know, your first series is up against Ben Stokes, right? It's not going to be easy. He was a terrible job. No one should take it. The 2 greatest sides of all time didn't have an all-rounder. With someone like Washi, he's probably 6th, right? So even as his fan, I don't see anything in his career where I'm like, he's definitely going to be able to bat at the top of the order.
And do you think that Gautam Gambhir has almost become a victim of that mentality? Because
I hear the transition word a lot, but if you objectively look at it, the only transition, at least in the batting order, is Shubman Gill at number 4.
We can blame the pitches. We have. We can blame the fact that the pitches have changed domestically. We have. Yeah. We can blame that there are younger players. We've done that. We're running out of excuses, guys. At a certain point, you have to go out and make runs.
Now, through the course of this video, we'll divide Mitchell Starc's career into 3 parts. We'll look at 35 Test match chunks and see how he's done in each of these periods. And for each of these chunks, we will be looking at how the red ball and the pink ball have worked for Mitchell Starc. It's important with Starc to talk about the pink ball because he's a different beast in that format. In fact, as of recording this video, Mitchell Starc is the highest wicket taker in pink ball Test cricket. And if you look at his averages and strike rates and compare them to the red ball, you'll see the difference. Where he averages close to 30 with the red ball, that average comes down to way below 20 with the pink ball. Even with the strike rates, with the red ball, he's close to a strike rate of 50, whereas with the pink ball, that strike rate comes down drastically to in the early 30s. And this is where we get into the first phase of his Test career, when Mitchell Starc is just making his debut for that Australian side. Here's an exciting prospect, not only for the fact that he's a left-arm pacer, but also because he constantly clocks 150 km per hour. This is around the period of 2011, and it is a time for transition in the Australian setup. You of course have some established pacers in the likes of Ben Hilfenau, Peter Siddle, Mitch Johnson coming towards the end of his career, but even apart from that, Australia has exciting young prospects. Along with Starc, he was competing with the likes of James Pattinson and Pat Cummins at the time, and Josh Hazlewood slightly later in his Test career. Now, what worked for Starc here, however, was that he was a left-arm pacer, and given how well Mitch Johnson had been doing in that period, it seemed impossible to not have Starc as the successor for Mitch Johnson. Starc was often used as a replacement for Mitchell Johnson when he was going through injury periods, but by the time 2013 came around, in that Ashes was where Mitchell Starc was picked ahead of Mitchell Johnson. And Starc was mostly in and out of the squad. While he did show glimpses of brilliance and had some amazing fast bowling spells, what was a problem with Starc from very early on was that he was fairly expensive. And Starc being in and out of the squad was something that continued till about 2015, from where he finally got a settled run up until 2019. Now, in the first 35 Test matches, the period we are looking at is only till 2017. And in this, if you look at his overall numbers, in the 35 Test matches, he's picked up 145 wickets. He does this at an average of 28 and a strike rate of 49. He's already got 7 fifers and 1 10-wicket haul. And of course, for a young pacer, these are already impressive numbers. This is also the time when Pat Cummins himself was in and out of the squad and going through injuries, and so Starc was slowly starting to establish himself as a quick that was a part of most playing 11s. This is also the period where pink ball Test cricket had just begun, and so Starc in this period played 3 pink ball Test matches. In these Test test matches, he picked up 16 wickets, but more importantly, he seemed to have an affinity towards the pink ball because his averages and strike rates were both better than the red ball, averaging 22 and striking at just 41. And in this period, when you look at Starc's overall numbers, you realize that he is a pacer who's still finding his feet in test cricket, but his numbers are pretty decent, right? He's got decent averages, decent strike rate, and you would assume that because of the fact that he's gaining experience, he would eventually go on to improve. But one thing that you need to keep in mind, however, is that because of the kind of pace that Starc generates and balls at, this was a period where he went through a lot of injuries. If you look at this graphic, it highlights all of the injuries that he's gone through just up until 2017. He's got multiple back stress fractures, he's had dodgy knees, dodgy ankles, even his calf had an issue. And so because of the kind of pace at which he bowled, Starc was very injury prone. But alright, so that's the first 35 test matches, and from here we move to the next phase of his career. This is roughly from 2017 to 2022, where he plays his next 35 test matches. Of course, he also misses out on an entire year of cricket, but that's because of COVID. This is also the point where Starc is now finally starting to enjoy an extended run in the test squad. He's no longer someone who has to fight for his spot, and he's more or less the first pick in the playing 11. This is also the time where he's slowly moving towards becoming a senior statesman for the squad. This period is important because Starc is now starting to establish himself as one of the reliable fast bowlers for Australia. And in fact, he was doing well. He was getting wickets in multiple places in different countries on different tours up until the Ashes of 2019 in England, where after just a test match, Starc breaks down. And of course, there is a reason for this apart from just the fact that he used to bowl express pace. Keep this in mind, and we will be revisiting this later in the video. Overall, in this 35 test match period in the second phase, Starc has picked up 138 wickets. He does this at an average of 27 and a strike rate of 50. Once again, in this period, he's got 6 fifers and he's also picked up a 10-fer. But this is where the pink ball starts to really have its effect. Because during this period, Starc ends up playing 7 pink ball test matches, and this is the period where he truly starts to establish himself as a pink ball demon. In just these 7 games, he ends up picking up 40 wickets. And he does this at a mind-blowing average of just 16.6 and a strike rate of just 33. And in these pink ball tests alone, he's picked up 3 fifers and a 10-wicket haul. And so when you see these numbers at first glance and you look at the overall numbers, you'd think that Starc has been pretty consistent. But then if you break it down and see the pink ball numbers, you'll realize that Starc has actually gotten a little worse in the red ball format. Because in the 28 red ball tests that he plays, he picks up 98 wickets. And he does this at an average of 31 and a strike rate of 57. Both of which are actually worse than when he was in his first phase of his test career. And this is where for a moment we go back to 2019. When Mitchell Starc got that injury in the Ashes, he attributes that injury to him trying to bowl a little differently as compared to his natural instinct. Starc was someone who always wanted to bowl fast. And a consequence of that, especially when he missed his lines and lengths, was that he was an expensive bowler. However, around that period was when he was trying to curb his natural instinct, and so what ended up happening because of this was that he was trying to hit lengths that were not natural to him, but along with that he also lost a lot of his airspeed. Eventually, not only did he end up losing his wicket-taking ability in this period, but he also injured himself simply because of the fact that his action was no longer rhythmic and natural. It was during the 2020 period and 2021 where he rectified this and started to make technical adjustments, small ones at that, so that he would be able to get back to his natural instinct. Eventually, through small tweaks like straightening his run up a bit, ensuring that his load and strides were correct, he got back his airspeed and also his wicket-taking ability. This is also something that brings us to the next phase of his career, and in fact the current phase. That is from 2022 to present day, where Starc just seems to have become a different beast in the test format. And this is a period where you can clearly see that Starc has all of his focus on test cricket. He achieved whatever he had to in the IPL, playing after a 10-year gap, but even apart from that, he skipped tournaments like the Champions Trophy, clearly emphasizing on how he wanted to focus on test cricket. And before we get into the numbers for this period, up until now what we've seen is that Starc in the last 2 phases of his career has never really had an average that was sub 25. Along with that, his strike rates were also usually around 50. And that's where when you come to this third phase, he's completely turned the narrative around. Because in this 32 test match period, Starc has picked up 137 wickets. But he's done this at a sub 25 average of just 23.9 and a sub 40 strike rate of 38.6. Impressive numbers by any means. Here too, the pink ball is his weapon of choice, because in just the 5 test matches, he's ended up up picking 33 wickets. He's done this at an average of 14.9 and a strike rate of just 27.3. These are mind-boggling numbers whichever way you look at it, continuing to strengthen the narrative that there's something about the pink ball that just works for Starc. But even in just the red ball games alone, the 27 games that he has played, he picked up 104 wickets. And here too, as compared to the previous two periods, Starc's averages and strike rates have improved drastically. He averages 26.7 and strikes at 42, which are his best red ball numbers for any of the three phases. And so here, one thing's for certain. In the last 4 years, Starc has been able to cement his legacy as one of Australia's legends. But what is it that changed in this period apart from just that technical change that has made Starc so lethal in this format? The first thing you'd want to see is whether or not Mitchell Starc is just being overshadowed by the likes of Josh Hazlewood and Pat Cummins, who are both brilliant pacers. And so we looked at numbers both with and without the presence of these fast bowlers. And so in the test matches that all three of these fast bowlers have played together, Starc averages around 27 and in fact has the best strike rate of 47 amongst all three pacers. And next we looked at matches where only Mitchell Starc has played in the absence of Josh Hazlewood as well as Pat Cummins. Here he averages 28, which is decent, but he strikes at 52, which is much higher than when he's playing with the two. And even in the absence of just one of these bowlers, either Hazlewood or Pat Cummins, the numbers are eerily similar. In both the cases, he averages 26 and strikes at 47. And so from this, one thing is clear. There is no definite correlation between whether or not Starc plays with or without these fast bowlers. In fact, I would go on to say that he is actually better when he plays in the trio. Only marginally, however. And then the next thing that we come to is the pink ball itself. Now, it goes without saying that Starc has been the best pink ball bowler alive today. And some people even go on to say if not for day-night tests and the pink ball, Starc's career might not have been as long as it is. Because if you look at the 15 pink ball test matches that Starc has played, he's picked up 89 wickets. He's done this at a brilliant average of 17 and a strike rate of just 32.9. He's also got 6 fifers and by far is the highest wicket taker in pink ball tests. And as for why the pink ball has worked for him, Jared Kimber talks about how the pink ball has amplified Starc's strengths. He talks about how the pink ball swings for longer, the pink ball just has better reception to bounce on pitches, and also the fact that Starc has played a lot of his cricket with the pink ball at Adelaide, a place that he was already a better bowler at. But something else that a lot of people might not consider is the simple fact that Australia in the last few years has been the toughest place to bat in. We pulled up batting averages for Australia since 2000, and in fact 2024, 2025 and also 2020 have been the 3 toughest years in terms of batting average for batters in Australia. This definitely means that there's been a lot more for the bowlers, and clearly Starc has cashed in on this as well. This is also important because of the 32 test matches that Starc has played in this final phase of his career, 50% of the games have been in Australia at home. In these 16 test matches, he's picked up 73 wickets and his numbers once again are brilliant with an average of 22 and a strike rate of 39. Both of these being better than his career metrics. But in his defense, Starc has also done well in England during this period, as you'll see from these averages and strike rates. So by no means is it that Starc has only done well in conditions that are conducive to him, but he's also done well in England where the tracks have been flat of late. And here's something else I also want you to think about. Just think about the longevity of Starc. We've seen him around for almost 15 years in the international circuit. In fact, after Glenn McGrath, he's the only other Australian pacer to play 100 plus test matches. In fact, since 2023, Starc has not missed a single test match and in fact is playing his 24th consecutive test match, which in itself is a huge deal, especially because of the fact that he's nearing 36. This is a testimony not only to his dedication for test cricket, but also the fact that he's just managed to keep his body in shape. Here's a man who up until 2017, as you saw in the graphic, went through a billion different injuries, and for him to still be here at 36 just shows how fit he's been. And with Starc, there's also always just this grand celebration and anticipation around the fact that he's brilliant with the new ball. The number of times he's opened the bowling and just got wickets in his first or second overs has been a joy to watch. In fact, in test matches since Mitchell Starc's debut, he's got the most number of test wickets in the first over of a test match. In just the 171 overs that he's bowled, he's picked up 26 wickets. Again, averaging 20 and striking at 39, which is the second best in the top 10. But even if you look at the second over of a test match, Starc once again is the highest wicket taker in this period. Once again, in the 183 overs, he's picked up 26 wickets. No surprise surprises, he again averages 20.9 and strikes at 42, both once again being brilliant numbers. And overall, we looked at how Starc has done with the new ball, focusing on the first 10 overs of a test match. He's bowled 737 overs where he's picked up 95 wickets with an average of 24 and a strike rate of 46. In fact, he's only one of two pacers in the top 10 to have a strike rate in the 40s. And this is where we close off with the technical bit, right? I earlier spoke about how Starc went back to remodeling his action almost to his original action that he started off with. Now, this of course ensured that his speed came back when the ball was going through the air, and this is also evident almost in the kind of dismissals he has. You'll see that a lot of his dismissals in the recent past in Test cricket have been full swinging deliveries. This is also evident in the fact that he has 99 dismissals in Test cricket out bowled. That's 23.5% of all of his wickets through the dismissal of bowled. And if you factor in LBWs, that number goes up to 37% of all of his wickets through just bowled and LBWs. And that means that one thing is very clear. Starc is someone who hits the stumps a lot. We also looked at how Josh Hazlewood and Pat Cummins have done, just to establish a kind of benchmark as to how good Starc is at hitting the stumps. Pat Cummins has got 16.5% of all of his dismissals as bowled. And if you factor in LBW, that number goes up to 24.9%. Whereas for Hazlewood, he's got 15.9% of all of his dismissals as bowled. And when you factor in LBWs, that number goes up to 28.8. Clearly, you'll see that Starc is about 8 to 10% higher than both of these bowlers. And so realistically, that's what it's all about. Starc is not someone who made a major technical change and that completely turned his career around. Rather, Starc is someone who through his experience has aged like fine wine. It has of course helped that conditions have become a lot more conducive to fast bowling, but it's also important for Starc at the age of 36 to be able to cash in on those conditions. And that's something that he's been doing extremely well. His ability to do well with the new ball, the fact that he still has the pace even at the age of 36, him being extremely quick through the air even compared to his counterparts who are younger than him, just means that Starc has been able to unlock something that a lot of bowlers can only dream of. His added pink ball brilliance might not only have saved his career, but in fact is now a cherry on top, and you know that when you give him the pink ball, he is going to wreak havoc. At this point in time, with 400 plus test wickets and having gone past Wasim Akram, Mitchell Starc is going to definitely go down as one of the greatest pacers of all time. And in this video, I haven't even begun to cover what he's been able to do in World Cups and his white ball exploits. But this has been a video on Mitchell Starc and what his career has looked like, how he's one of the greats of the game, and how he's just become a beast in this final version of his career. And if you're a part of the Discord community, you know that we had a writing competition which was won by Ronak recently. Go check out the article, the link will be in the description. It's a brilliant piece on Sachin, Amol Mazumdar and Vinod Kamli. Leave your comments down below, subscribe to the channel, keep supporting us, get memberships so that we can continue to churn out amazing content for you. All of our links are in the description. Follow us everywhere. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.
Now, being a cricket fan can be difficult. Now, having a job, going to school, going to college, and then being an Indian cricket fan, especially at this point, can be a lot more difficult. So, if you guys are thinking about getting therapy for yourself to feel better, we have an offer for you. Get your first therapy session on a 15% off with Adapt Wellness with the coupon code JBFirst. All you have to do is go to their website, find yourself a therapist, go to their Instagram account, DM them your therapist and the coupon code, and get your first therapy session on a discount. Make sure you're taking care of your physical health and also of your mental health.